So the justification of the problem lies in the research gap. Yeah, I hope that addresses that question.
Yes, please, Prof. Thank you very much.
Okay, so last week we talked about a research framework, and I mentioned that whatever you do, the research framework is what actually helps you to carry out your research activity. And I said that most of the time you have every research work will have a research framework, but there are some research works that could be so exploratory that they don't have any framework. They will just have a discussion in literature and they just go to the field and collect data. So it's possible. However, in that case, the research questions will be framing the study. So there will still be a frame that's guiding the study. It could be the research questions. Okay. Now, the research framework can be informed by a theory that somebody can either adapt or adopt. Adopt means that you take it as it is. Adapt means that you modify it to suit what you want to use it for. Modification can come from adding of further variables to it, so they can be able to use it to do the work. Good. I hope that part is well understood and well received. Okay. Now, when we take the next step on, when you modify the research gap, the research, the theory exists in an abstract world. So when you modify it, you are moving it into a conceptual state. Conceptual state meaning that you are suggesting that this could be the possible relationships that could govern the phenomenon that you are trying to study. Please, very careful of the words I'm using. So that's why I'm taking my time. That will govern the phenomenon they are trying to study. So the research conceptual framework is what you carry out the study. So in process, the research framework is also a conceptual framework. Good. Number two, sometimes somebody may not pick a theory or may pick a theory and combine with other literature. So sometimes it happens in some of the quantitative studies that people will review a different set of factors from the literature and they will use that one to postulate a model and they will go and use it to do the research work that they are carrying out. Okay. So there could be different ways that it could be formulated. Now, how are the theories used in the research? So first of all, people use theories as is. So somebody may pick a theory, not do anything to it, and then use it as it is. So sometimes you may come across long essays and theses and even academic papers that somebody says is using maybe the motivation opportunity ability theory, which is in marketing and in management. Now, that theory, the person may end up picking it up and then use the variables as you not add anything. You use it to study the phenomenon he's trying to study. So in that scenario, you're using a theory as is. You're using a theory as is. You're not adding anything to that. So that I will just show an examples of that, maybe an example of that as we go on. I hope I can find one to show you. Okay. And there's a paper that I worked on. If you go to Google and you type telecommuting, and that paper, and you add Boateng, so let's say telecommuting.
Prof, we can see your browser screen, please.
I'm not opening my browser screen for you. I'm saying, I thought you are doing it.
Yes.
Okay, telecommuting, and then you add Boateng. So you end up having a paper that's published in Wiley. It's in Wiley, but it's published in a particular journal for information systems. In that particular paper, what I tried to do was to work with a colleague where we're trying to understand what are the factors that influence telecommuting in a developing country called Ghana. And we're looking at it from an organizational perspective. So you can see it there. Now there's a technology, there's a model called the technology organization environment framework, which is what we call an interactionist framework. Interactionist framework is that it brings a multiple set of factors together and then try to let them explain the phenomenon. So this one brings technological factors, organizational factors, and environmental factors together to be able to explain adoption of an innovation. So it's not just for information systems, it can be used for any other thing. So, and this is how it looks like. Now, it was formulated by Oliver and Martins, and they published, I think they published, there was a book that was written and by Tonaski and Fleischer, and the Oliver and Martins had a chapter in that book, something like that. It's either one of them, but most often people say it's Tonaski and Fleischer because they are the ones who wrote the book. But I think somebody had a chapter in the book, and the chapter was written by somebody else. Okay, now, but whichever it is, these authors are the ones that you see that their names are Tonaski and Fleischer here. Good. Now you have got the environmental factors, organizational factors, and technological factors. So I picked up the model, and usually, because it's an interaction from it embodies a lot of different factors. So there's a lot of factors under environment that you can postulate, organization, environment. So when you choose that you're going to use for your work, you have to tell us which environmental factors are you looking at, which organizational factors are you looking at, which technological factors are you looking at. So we chose it to do our work. And for example, under the technological context, we're looking at technological trends and use technologies and convenience. And organizational, we're looking at organizational characteristics and job characteristics. Because you're looking at job telecommuting in the workplace. And then in the environmental factors, look at household characteristics and community issues. So we put them together and then we use it to do our study. So we have used the theory as is. The only thing that I can say is that we have actually had the tenets of the theory, but the components of measurement is what we have adapted. We have adapted from other studies. We have taken from other studies. Okay. So we use this as is. So the theory as is. We are not adding any other variable. But the other papers that you see now, for example, I use the same theory to look into e-learning adoption in a developing country. And the other variable I added was the nature of the course, because we didn't, you see, this is at the environment of the e-learning platform, the technology and the organization. This is a university, this is a technology, and this is maybe the institutional framework, the country framework. For example, Ministry of Education talking about the fact that we should start, tertiary institutions should develop an e-learning policy to come here. But then I said that we argued that when you enter the classroom, you have to also consider the nature of the course. The nature of the course that's being taken. So we added one variable about the nature of the course. It's not all courses that can easily be made E. So we added that one and we used to do the study. So sometimes in that case, what has happened here is I have done something a little bit different. I have taken the theory and I picked a factor from the literature to add onto it. I've taken the theory and I picked the factor from literature and add onto it. And if you look at the example that I've been using to teach, there's a paper that is called The Theory of Plant Behavior as used in to study brown larvae. In that paper, for example, they picked the theory as is, but they thought the theory was not enough. So after discussing the theory, which the other time I talked about, they used to study brown larvae and brown forgiveness. So they postulated that there could be other variables. So they put attitude from the theory, subjective norm from the theory, perceived behavioral controls from the theory, but the operationalization of the perceived behavioral control is more specific to what the study that is being carried out. So they chose this one, the first one, propensity to anthropomorphize, and then you have got affordability as part of the perceived behavioral control. Then they say it goes to a behavior and then intention to perform a behavior, and then the behavior is so the behavior is forgiveness. The intention to perform a behavior, they characterize by brand love. If a person loves a brand, the intention he may actually learn to be more quite keen to forgive the brand. But he said that the authors argue that it depends on the level of involvement of the actor. So they brought involvement as a moderator. So here you have a theory and we are adding literature to it. So even if you check the write-up of the paper, I hope you are seeing my screen. The gentleman who was saying you don't see my screen. We are seeing my screen now.
Yes, bro.
So if you look at it, if you look at it, they talked about involvement with the product category. See, all the rest of the variables, they discuss them in terms of the theory. Look at integration of the theory of plant behavior for brand love. So there's subjective norm, there's attitude, the paragraph for attitude, a paragraph for subjective norm, and a paragraph for perceived behavioral control, which has got the facilitating and inhibiting control factors. When you finish that one, then you had another category of factors, involvement with the product category. So you had that one as a whole discussion on its own. So you see, this is the literature review that has generated. How do you say it? Say additionally, addition to the theory, addition the moderatory role of involvement with the product category is investigated in this study. Zachiskowski defined involvement as, so you see, it's coming from the literature. It's adding it to it. Okay. So let's continue with the different examples. So then sometimes others will pick multiple theories or multiple theories with literature. So multiple theories or multiple theories with literature. Now just use one example because most often you pick multiple theories, then you may pick one or two theories to address your research questions. And then you may draw on literature too in that scenario. Okay. Now in my, before I jump, okay, after that, I'll show you something. So in my PhD like this, I ended up using the resource-based theory of a firm. Now, to be able to do that, I need to conduct a review of the different approaches to e-commerce in developing countries. So I did this, and I saw all the different papers that have been used for studying e-commerce from a strategic approach in developing countries. So there are theories from strategic management, that's the dynamic ability approach, institutional economics, and the TOE framework. So you see a TOE framework, the technology organization environment. Then there's also this other theory, process-based theory. Okay. Then when you go to a theory from socio-technical studies, actor network theory by Professor. Then framework-based approach, they are not using a theory, they are just develop a framework and they use to carry out the study. So a 4-dimensional typology of strategy content and 3-dimensional typology of strategy process. Then the 5 C's framework. The last is the strategic alignment maturity model. So we have here a number of different studies that are being carried out. And they are using all these different theories. Okay. Now, the dominant theory, this is just a snapshot. So the dominant theory that you see in most of the work is the resource-based theory. But there's even gaps around that one, that they need to explore the link between proposed managerial capabilities and e-commerce capabilities. And then there's another one here. Somebody uses social economics and then RBT again. They need to contextualize the existing knowledge to be consistent with the dynamic nature of the environment. So there's gaps in using the RBT model. So in that scenario, I picked the RBT model. And then I also picked something we call the capability life cycle that tried to explain how the possible paths through which resources are developed. So you're not just studying what resources the person has, which is the RBT. You're looking at how the person develops resources. So there are two parts of the research questions. Part A, what resources are valuable for e-commerce benefits? Part B, how are those resources become valuable? How do we organizations orient the resource and deploy it to be able to make to gain some value out of it? Now, to be able to do that, I need to understand that what theory can help us understand how or explain how theory and resources can evolve through a possible set of paths or can be developed. So the understanding of how resources evolve through a set of possible paths is theoretically characterized by the CLC, that's capability life cycle. Paths refer to a strategic alternative available to the firm or in relation to the study, a set of decision options through which the resource evolution occurs to create benefits. While the dynamic capability framework argues that firms need dynamic capability to bring change in the firm's capability to respond to rapidly changing environments, the authors of the CLC argue that all the capabilities that have a potential to accommodate change, and not all the change, all capabilities have the potential to accommodate change, but not all the change requires the intervention of dynamic capabilities as intermediaries. So then they develop their own model to explain how resources get to be developed, to emerge, and then to they progress into maturity, and then they decline. So he had about 3 stages: the founding stage, the developing stage, and the maturity stage. And that's what I used to do my work. Okay. So in this scenario, you have got the RBT framework, then the CLC framework coming from Helfat and Petrov, and some kind of literature review being done here, so that it can be the three of them can come together. Okay, let's continue then. Then you also have sometimes literature only. So literature only, you may not see any paper being used to do that, any discussion of theory in it, but maybe they may discuss the literature and then from there they may just go ahead and collect data. It's, a number of papers do that, and I think that's more common for a lot of students. Now, I'm going to just show a few papers here and show, and then we can look at what kind of approach they are using. So, to be able to do that, let me just share my screen. Hey, am I recording? Okay, I'm recording. Good. So let's look at it. I'll take first of all health barriers from healthcare. Now, this one is a study about patient-centered care. Now, patient-centered care is what the author is trying to study. And what does he want to know about that? Facilitating barriers of patient-centered care. So to be able to do that, he built a conceptual framework. But he said, look, the study is informed by the work of Dale Chalet. Chalet, okay. Chalet in his work, patient-centered care. What does it take? Establish 7 key factors that contribute to PCC at organizational level. The factors include leadership, involvement, patient and family at different levels, or communication, and then it goes on to about the 7th one. So those ones are about the factors that contribute. So we can use those ones as the factors that which are facilitators. But then to be able to look at barriers, Chalet's work did not consider barriers to PCC. Literature has detailed resource constraints. So what type of thing have we seen here? We have seen an established framework from Chalet, and then literature being added. So that's why I told you that sometimes you can have a theory that literature has been added to it. So the theory is that the literature has been added to it, and the literature has 4 or 5 literature here have been added to it. And then he's able to come up with the barriers and the facilitators to be able to do patient-centered care. Does it make sense?
Yes, bro.
Okay, good. No question here, so let me continue. I'm not saying there can no question. I'm just saying that the person who has asked the question. Now, this is another paper by Professor Bawole. This is our dean. He says that are 2 heads better than 1? Challenges and prospects of chiefs and local government collaborative community development in Ghana. Now, if you look at the paper very well, let's see where the theory issues are. Okay. Okay. He said this paper adopts a mixed government and social capital theories to guide the analysis of the relationship between chiefs and local government authorities in the delivery of local development in the local communities. Mixed government is explained as a cooperative interaction that exists between distinct and relatively independent government institutions. In most parts of Africa, that is going to apply the theory. Then after I talked about social capital and explains it. So here you have got 2 theories, or 1 concept and then 1 actual theory. So you pick out the mixed government and then the social capital, and then he's using it for the work. Okay. So I just wanted to illustrate. I'm not reading the whole paper. I hope it makes sense. You have in this scenario, I've got 2 theories being brought together, or 2 communities of theories being brought together. I'm trying to get another paper. Now look at this paper. Exploring the link between organizational justice and job satisfaction and performance in Ghanaian hospitals. I'm not going to read the gap, but look at the theoretical framework. Now, this is the right conceptual framework, written theoretical framework. But when he finished, he drew a model here. I wonder, but that he called the model rather conceptual. Look at the model. What you wrote here. Figure 1 is a framework conceptualizing the measures of the facets of organizational justice. So here, the word theoretical framework refers to the theoretical underpinnings of the framework is going to develop. What did I say? I said that the word here, or 2 words here, theoretical framework, refers to the theoretical underpinnings of the framework is going to develop. So if you look at what he says, organizational justice is described as employee perception of how an organization treats them with fairness. A highly leveraged approach to understand the concept was suggested by Morman, who observed that organizational justice is concerned with employees' determination of how they have influence, they have been fairly treated on the job, and the manner in which such determinants influence other work-related variables. Different theories. Now I understand. So that means that even organizational justice is a paradigm that embodies a number of theories. Different theories have been propounded to explain the concept of organizational theory. 1, equity theories. 2, a social exchange theory. 3, relative deprivation theory. And 4, justice motive theory. And then 5, justice judgment model. Okay. So he mentioned all of them here. Based on this theory, 3 components of organizations have been identified in the literature. Somebody then categorized the theories and established that the theories are 1, centered around distributive justice, procedural justice, and interactional justice. Although many organizational theories have placed emphasis on distributive and procedural justice as a yardstick for determining fairness and better performance, the interactionist aspect is also essential in explaining the link between managers and subordinates, as well as performance. The 3 components are discussed as follows. So he discusses all the 3. So then he goes on to discuss the interactional justice and then makes a case on the relationship between international justice and other issues, and then comes up with the conceptual framework. So what I'm just trying to point out here is that you have a paradigm in which there are a number of theories there. He looks at all the theories and then make a choice of what variables will be applicable to those theories. And then you see that the framework for conceptualizing the measures so the measures are determined from the literature review. So you have got multiple theories and you've got like good literature review supporting this particular model. So now let me see which other field do I have to go to. As for finance, okay, let me use this one. So the purpose of this paper is to examine the trends, the surge in mergers and acquisition as an entry mode, home and country influences. They developed 3 regression models, namely ordinary least squares, random effects, and fixed effects to examine the impact of the home country macroeconomic and cultural factors on mergers and acquisition. Okay, so
Prof, we can see the new screen.
Oh, sorry. I go to finance. I've rather left them behind. Oh, forgive me, finance. Mhm.
I think it's probably their internet because when you click, I can see it.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you very much for the feedback. So if you scroll through, you may find, oh, this is the literature review. Okay. And you see there's a lot of discussions here. I've not read the paper, so I don't know what's inside, but I just went online to download it right now. So cool, good. This is a literature review that they are using to develop hypothesis development. So according to political economic theory, governments' economic policies in home country and institutions played an important role in shaping international expansion behavior and the trajectory of multinational enterprises. So they mentioned that home country economic policies and institutional environment create a macroeconomic stability, minimize distortions, support competitiveness, and encourage private sector development and expansion. Drawing on both macroeconomic theory and institutional perspective, we put forward a number of home country factors. So look at what's happening here. The macroeconomic theory has been picked. Institutional perspectives have been picked from the literature. They put them together and they come up with a bunch of factors. I don't know whether they turn it into an equation. Good. I said it. They turn it into an equation. So they develop a model out of it, and they are going to use it to do their regression. So the model that you have here is based on literature and what? Literature and macroeconomic theory. And the literature they have even drawn on is institutional perspectives. So now, let me show one more. I want to use this one because that one is a little bit different. Sometimes somebody can use a theory to explain the interaction between variables, not necessarily be prescribed variable. The macroeconomic one that you saw, that they are using it to explain certain things in their model, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the macroeconomic theory will prescribe all the variables in the model. That's what I'm trying to say. So let's take this example. Now, there's this paper that was used to look at, last week we looked at part of it. It's a paper on the use of signaling theory in the banking sector. Now, if you look at it very carefully, there is a section here on online relationship marketing. Then there's another one on the signaling role of ORM activity. So signaling theory will be used to explain the role of online relationship marketing activities in a firm. The theory emerged in response to information asymmetry when parties and exchange have access to different types of information between transacting parties in business relations. Okay, this information asymmetry often occurs with regard to the characteristics of the service provider and the ability to effectively satisfy the needs of their customers. Signaling theory has been widely used in different fields to explain customer choice phenomenon. Now, keep this in mind. It has been widely used to do what? Sometimes I'll be teaching you about something called selection of theories. You always have to know what has been the theory been known for. So if you are extending to use to do it for something else, if it's going to a different domain, then you have to be very careful. The theory may not be applicable. So it espouses three primary elements, namely the signaler, the service provider, the receiver, the customer, and the signal. The service provider, in an effort to influence the opinions of the customers, often communicate information concerning their brand attributes and quality of their service delivery. They desire to assure customers of credibility and integrity of this information. Okay. They desire to assure customers of their credibility and integrity, and this information is converted into signals, which are actually transmitted to the customers using various mediums. In recent times, firms have been increasingly relying on the features of IT to send signals to customers. So that's how it is going to be used to explain. just about the signals. So what are the signals that you want to try and do? So you have got certain activities that allow the signals to be communicated. And then it goes to an outcome. One of the outcomes is customer loyalty, what you want to achieve. And the activities are engagement, interactivity, and then there's also some mediating role of trust. Okay. So if you look at the model, this is what's happening here. This is not a model on signaling theory. This is a model to explain online relationship marketing activities and leading to an outcome of loyalty. But what brought the variables together is the signaling theory. So within the activity, certain signals are sent. If your customer interprets it well, it will create the outcome be all customer loyalty. However, it all depends on, it could also be that signal that is being sent, it could be mediated by online trust. And what they say here, researchers such as Zhu and Sander have demonstrated that the relation between interactivity and engagement, there's a relation between interactivity and engagement. Now I want the online code. Interactivity tends to enhance the appeal of interfaces to customers online through the enhancement of their stickiness. This is usually achieved by the means of interactive features of online applications utilized by firms. Utilized by firms in their relation building efforts. Researchers such as Shin opine the mediating role of interactivity in predicting the customer behavioral intention during firm customer interaction. For this reason, it's hypothesized that interactivity mediates the relation between engagement and online trust, and the interactivity mediates the relation between engagement and customer loyalty. So where is the online trust one? Let me see if I can find them. Okay, that'll be it. Okay, so what you have here is that you have engagement interactivity, online trust, and customer loyalty. What you was talking about, the fact that interactivity here now becomes a mediator between engagement and online trust, and then engagement and then customer loyalty. At the same time, online trust becomes a mediator between engagement and customer loyalty, and then interactivity and customer loyalty. Okay. So at least I've been able to showcase a number of different ways in which these theories are being used. Okay, so let me go back to my exercise. Any question? If you don't have any questions, I'm continuing. So you can have a theory being used in terms of multiple theories come together, multiple theories in literature only, and such that no theory is used. That one is very simple to find. Now, how do you select the theory in the research work? The first thing is that literature review is a synthesis of available resources and materials which are in strong relation with the topic in question. What is your topic in question? That's your concept you have in mind. And then a critical evaluation, a comparative analysis of each work. So the topic in question is your concept. A phenomenon can have several combination of concepts. Concepts can then generate several perspectives and hence several questions. A measurable concept then becomes a construct. Now, so let's say that you have you want to study something like motivation. A concept that can be related to motivation is the attitude towards the motivation. That could be. Now, I need to also explain that when you have a concept, it is just a part of or an outcome of a phenomenon. So somebody is trying to do a study on, let's say, female entrepreneurship in the extractive industry. The concept here that he is dealing with is entrepreneurship. The sub-theme that can be coming up is female entrepreneurship. So when you take it, for example, you can realize that the student can have either studying, reading papers on female entrepreneurship or women and entrepreneurship, or if it's in a particular sector, you can even narrow down on the particular women in that sector, then entrepreneurship and women in that sector. So there's quite opportunities to look at. Now, the concept itself helps us to come up with a theory. The theories are propositions or relation between the concepts, which are used for principles for exploring, describing, explaining, and predicting apparent relationship in a resolved phenomenon. So when you have a phenomenon there, the phenomenon can have several concepts within it. The phenomenon of study that you have, the concept that characterizes can then lead to the type of question theory that you want to use in your work. So somebody is talking about motivation of students in taking a course. Now, the whole idea is about student motivation. He could draw on a theory that can well explain the student motivation so that you could actually use it to be able to come up with a solution on how to motivate the students. Now, in the real world, data is collected through a process called method concerning the constructs in order to unearth the phenomenon. This process leads to the answers to the research questions. Now, to be able to come up with your method, you need to understand the concept and the theory that underpin the concepts. Then you can then be able to take the data you are collecting, you go and collect data through the method, you collect the data and then interpret it in a manner that helps us understand or find answers to the questions that you had earlier. So what is important in the first step in selecting a topic, selecting a theory, is to understand that what are you dealing with? What are the concepts you are dealing with? And what are the theories that or other information that may be relevant in understanding the particular concept? So you have a concept in mind, it will lead to your theory, then to lead to your method. But you need to understand that these things come together for you to be able to formulate that particular theory. So sometimes students can have a concept, then he has a method in mind, then he goes for the theory. Or can have a concept, then be looking at other issues, the concept and how it's applied in different domains, and end up coming up with selecting a theory. But we'll go through the process and then we'll look at the examples that exist. Okay. So the first question is that, what is the concept of phenomenal study? What theories or conceptual framework have been used to study those concepts in a phenomena? Now, when I showed you my paper on e-commerce and developing countries, I showed you a table that was summarizing all or existing papers on strategic management. And now, and in that existing papers, I was able to tease out what research has gone so far in the area of e-commerce in developing countries from a strategic perspective. And I showed you an example of the different types of theories. Now, if I don't do that, I don't have any established base where I can make my argument, because I'll choose a theory and to be out of chance. So by doing that, I'm able to establish existing theories that are in the area and even frameworks, then I can make a choice based on mine. Okay, number two, what are the existing critiques of a theory you have identified or no? Which of them can give an opportunity for contribution based on your research area? So next question that comes is that you have the theory in mind. Can you find the criticism of the theory so that I can say that whilst you are doing the study, you are addressing this and this issue? How do you find criticism of the theory? You can type something like theory of planned behavior, the name of the theory, in and add criticisms in or critique into Google, and then you have so much critiques that comes up. Some of them may even discourage you for ever even touching the theory. Some of them may even help you. So that helps you to be able to know what are the existing weaknesses in the theory, and then ask yourself that, can you be able to do something about it within the given time that you have for your PhD and the context of where you're doing a PhD from? Then you say, what discipline do you belong to? So another choice is the discipline. Remember that when I was talking about signaling theory, the paper was written by the author. The author wrote that signaling theory has been used in several studies that tend to focus on customer choice. So you are picking the theory. What has the theory done before? What is the background? What is the CV of the theory? And is the CV of the theory belonging to the field of study? Because you're applying, the theory is applying for a job at your office, and you will belong to finance. And you are picking a theory. The guy who is the theory that's applying for the job is coming from signaling theory, is coming from management and then marketing to general management and marketing. But you are doing finance. Is the signaling theory having enough relevance in the CV to get a job at in your thesis. If not, then don't do that. Okay. Then do you really know and understand the components of the theory, the construct, the assumption, the logic, the theory? Can you measure them or study them in empirical? Are there sample questions and measurement items for you to use? This is a very, very good question. I'll come to it later. So let's continue one. The first thing so these are the questions in mind. So let's go through using the questions and thinking about how we can go about it. The first one is selection of the theory. First consideration that people use or approach that people use is one, selection of a theory based on a concept or a phenomenon. Number two, based on theory and conflicts and weaknesses. Number three, the discipline or the area of study. So the first one, every phenomenon or concept, you see, we said that a phenomenon can have several concepts within it. So some of the concepts that you try to study belong to a particular type of phenomenon, like let's say a phenomenon of let's say organizational learning. Now, the concept there could actually also be learning, and then you have the organizational part of it that he's trying to do. So the student can start by asking himself, what are the dominant theories in the organizational learning? So this one is good that you use a database to search so that you can establish what you are talking about. So it's important to know the theories that govern the area of study. So you can Google and then to bring a report out and you can be able to read it for yourself and keep it. Okay, the next one is, okay, let's go. So this is what I was talking about. So go to Google and type in the name of the concept. So let's say I go to Google. Now to make it better, I will rather start from Google Scholar. So let's take an example that a student is doing something on credit financing. Please, credit financing for finance or for account or for both?
It's for
Prof,
account.
please, you mean financing?
I said credit financing. You see, I didn't even finish it. That's about it. Credit financing theory. Now, do you see what we are getting? A unified theory of topics. Q, corporate investment, finance and risk management. Law enforcement and financing, theory and evidence. Financing technology, assessment of theory and practice. Customer financing, and this one, okay. Our results shed light on the relevance of financing theory on trade credit among firms. So this is okay. The credit theory of money. Hey, I didn't even know. Financing in Kalikis or Kalichis. I don't know whether the Q will be silent. Kalikis theory. Finance, you're not even helping me. You're just looking at the thing, you're quiet. Is this still making sense to you? What we are reading?
We're here.
Financing of SMEs and an asset tie story. Now I will close it so that because you are not responding. In kind,
Prof,
a theory of trade credit.
hello, Prof.
Yes, I'm here.
Please, maybe you should search debt financing.
I won't search for debt financing. I'm done. I want credit. You want me to go to debit? Nobody's being debited here. Let's stay with credit. Now, the reason
I didn't say debit, I said debt.
yes, debt and debit, all those things we are not going to. We just want to show an example. All of it is a subtraction, so we don't want it. Anyway, so what I'm trying to point out here, we are just learning something here. It means that you are conversant with debt financing. Why? So it's important to look at it. Now you see that there's other theories for credit financing. Maybe you didn't know. So, and that's one thing that students do. They would like to go to where they know already. But sometimes it's also good to use a theory which you may not know. But you have to check. Okay, I'll talk about the checks you should check before you should select it. Okay, so we have seen this one. Okay, now let's go to HR. HR, for HR. That so let's say we can find something called recruitment and selection theory. Because there are strategies for it. So recruitment and selection theory. Okay, so I don't know whether there's any theory like that. Okay, a framework of practices. So there's some frameworks there. Oh, there's recruiting theory. I didn't even know. See, in the Sage Handbook of Human Resource, there's recruitment theory. Okay, so it's actually possible. Then there's the basis of impression management theory. Interesting. So that's all I'm talking about. Step one, type the thing and add the word theory. Okay, now step two. Okay, this is resource-based theory. So the resource-based theory, we talked about it earlier. These are the components of it. I don't think I want to explain it into detail. People can go and read about it. I want to make use of time because a lot of things I want to explain. So the first one is that you can also search a theory based on the area. This is a strategy framework. So I can look for strategy theories and to bring resource. So if I say resource strategy models, even look at it, theory. So there's actually a theory of industry dynamics. That's good. Then the marketing contribution business, resource advantage theory, relationship theory. So even because of the way I wrote it, I didn't add a resource-based theory, but I just wanted theories on resources. Okay, so there's quite interesting theories here. Organization, environment, business strategy, human resource strategy. Okay. An integrated view of resource investment and incremental choice process. This also will be theory. Okay. A resource-based theory, competitive advantage, implication for formulation, strategy formulation. Okay, it's there. A scientific critique. Remember, I told you that you can have critique. Sanchez. I can remember Sanchez. I used for my PhD. Okay. Raising rival costs through political strategy, an extension of resource-based theory. So resource-based theory is for strategy in terms of organizational strategy. Now somebody uses it for political strategy. That's interesting. And publish in the Journal of Management. That's a good journal. Okay. So you can do that. But the resource-based theory has got its kind of criticisms. So sometimes over time, theories may have some questions which are unanswered. And criticisms may emerge. So there's a need to either extend the theory or respond to the weaknesses of the theory. Okay. So you can have criticisms of the theory, the need to extend the theory to a new model, the existing model to a new areas of study, and the time value of the theory. Time value means that time has passed, the contribution knowledge it gives us, industry has changed. So it needs to be changed. So you can go to Google and type the name of a theory you know and add the word criticism. So we can say resource-based theory and add critique. So there's a wow, 3 schools of thought and 13 criticisms. Hey, 13. So it tells you that there's room for additions. And somebody has even written a paper reviewing all the critiques. Then application of somebody has even made it much more relevant in terms of a particular area. Application of resource-based view to project management research, supporters and opponents. So you see how he's also doing critique, but he's calling supporters and opponents. Supporters and opponents. Okay, so adding the critique will help. Now, I mentioned that there's something we call the capability life cycle model, and this is how it looks. Or we call it the same way, the same is also called the resource development life cycle. So Helfert developed this in response to the fact that the resource-based theory does not help you to understand how resources get developed and then they become part of the organization. So he developed this to explain that. That's it. Then sometimes you have an area of study that you need to extend the theory. So there used to be a theory called the TAM model. That's the technology acceptance model. Please, nobody should be using it. It's too much overuse, and there's very little room for new contribution. And it has been well criticized, and people have responded to a criticism. So sometimes if it has been criticized, and then the area you don't have enough papers to respond to your criticism, then there's enough opportunity for you to add new things to the area. Okay. So the technology acceptance model, the argument was that it was deterministic in terms of technology. There were no other variables which capture the human views and then subjectivity that can come from the environment that the person is in. So arguments came up with the fact that we should look at it in a different way. But this is how I use the TAM model, and I also modified a few things to study adoption of m-commerce adoption by traders in Nigeria. Now the TAM model doesn't look at usage, it looks at just adoption. So I added the usage part to it, and I use it to do my study. Now, over the time, other models come up, and sometimes the authors themselves come and change and modify the model. So if you look at this one example, the first one is Dillon and McLean Information Systems Success Model that tries to explain how firms become successful in using information systems and what success could they obtain, what benefits could they obtain. 10 years after, they themselves came to change it, and they called it updated Dillon and McLean model. Why? Because they realized that other people have come in the area and they have brought criticism. So they wanted to respond to criticisms and propose new changes to the model. Currently, I think they've even modified it again. Because if you don't become the evangelist of your own model, nobody becomes an evangelist of your model for you, unless they find interest. Then I've got term 1, term 2, term 3, term 4. That means that there have been several iterations of the term model. Then you also have the theory of plan behavior, which we looked at earlier. Somebody later on came up with a decomposed theory of plan behavior. So you broke it into pieces and then added other variables. Now, I'm just using this as an example, please. It doesn't mean that all the theories are only on technology. I'm just using it as an example, and because I come from there. And these are the very basic examples that I can use to explain things to you. But as you go into your different fields of study, you can also find other examples from your work. Now, this one is called the theory of reason action, which was developed in 1975 by Fishman and Agent. And if you look at it, they factored in the software issues, not the technology issues. They're talking about, because it's about actions, it's not about technology. It's about action. So it's coming from social science or psychology, I think so. So you have got attitude towards a behavior, and then the norms that force you or encourage you to perform the behavior. So that will go to the subject, the norms and the attitude go to intention, then the actual performance of the behavior will come. Now, if you look at it, later on, Agent 1985, 10 years after. So you see what I was telling you. Agent came back and said that sometimes a person's intention to perform a behavior can be controlled by other external factors, which he called the person's own assessment of the situation in the environment and being able to define whether it will affect him or not. So you call those one perceived. It's your own assessment of the situation impediments. Okay, so later on somebody came up with the decomposed theory of planned behavior. And then they broke up down the attitude into 3 by looking at other theories that could actually also explain attitude. And then subjective norm, they look at peer influence and superior influence. And then they look at perceived behavioral control. They have got self-efficacy, resource facilitating conditions, technology facilitating conditions. Now, if you look at it, perceived behavioral control is the only one that can actually influence not just the intention, but also influence the actual performance of the behavior. Now, because people don't study the behavior a lot, sometimes you don't see this arrow. Even the previous paper we're looking at for marketing, you don't see this arrow. Okay. So here you see, this is from the brown lab paper. We have that one that we have looked at already. Okay. Hey, you say I'm not audible. I'm talking, I'm taking my time because this one, I don't want people to get confused. And I also want people to explain and ask me questions, but they're not asking me. So I'm just taking my time. Okay. So this is another model that I think this one, you see it in marketing, you see it in some accounting students who study accounting technology. Yeah. Now, and even HR. Now, this one is a unified theory of acceptance and use of technology. So Davis you see the young gentleman Davis were part of people who formed the TAM model. So years after, people who came to do, I think they came to do PhD under his research center or his university, Venkatash joined, and Venkatash was given the assignment of reviewing all the technology acceptance theories and those which are, or all the type of acceptance, behavioral acceptance, all kinds of acceptance theories, and bring the technology issues and the non-technology issues together into one model and test. So he then developed what the unified theory, means I've unified all the variables for not just acceptance, but for use. Remember, I told you that TAM doesn't look at use, it is only acceptance or adoption. So he's bringing it together for unified theory of acceptance and the use of the technology. So he brought the moderating variables as gender, age, experience, and voluntariness. And then you got the performance expectancy, that's the perceived usefulness of what you're going to see. Effort expectancy, that's the perceived ease of use. Social influence, that's what you call subjective norm. Facilitating conditions, that's what you call perceived behavioral control. Okay. Now see another person in medical science, like from healthcare, who is trying to use it to study robotic assisted surgery, whether doctors will like it or not. So he has got the effort expectancy, the performance expectancy, and he has got the measures underneath them, facilitating conditions, social influence. But he's talking about the fact that there could also be attitude towards using technology from the doctor. So that's here. And then the leadership of the institution. So you see that you have got, and now you are seeing that you have got attitude that is towards that's other variables that are at the managerial level, the human being level. And then leadership coming from the organizational level can actually influence this and can reinforce. So if people are able to use it very well, it will reinforce the investment that management has done here. So the reason why these things happen is because the theories change, and they change because sometimes there's a requirement in science to advance knowledge. We are not doing the same things as we used to do. Or consumers' tastes change, their views change, the market changes, trends and new behavior happens in the market, so we have to respond to it. Or current theories are inadequate in explaining the rapid changes in society. So we need new theories, and that means that we have to change the way we see things. And sometimes the context itself, there are challenges to the context. For example, some of the models that have been developed were developed in the developed country. And most of them, their market systems are well established and well structured. And there's a lot of legal framework to support the market system. But that's not the same here in developed countries. So you may not see these things, seeing these variables develop well in developed countries, developing countries, as compared to developed countries. So developed countries have one better structure, and developing countries have not got that. So if you take a theory that was developed in a developed country, sorry, if you take a theory that was actually conceptualized and proposed from a developed country, that's from authors who work and live in a developed country, and the data is came from a developed country, you may have a situation in which you have to see if you are translating it to apply the theory in a developing country, you have to think about how do you translate it. Okay. The last one is about the disciplinary area. Somebody's coming from IS, somebody's coming from marketing, somebody's coming from theory, management. So the nature of the question, the maturity of the issue, researchers tend to move from other disciplines, not all the time they're from their own discipline. So if you disciplinary studies, what technology theories of economics and finance. So I think you are conversant to at least one of the things here. Marxism, Keynesian, New Classical. So some of them are schools of thought, some of them are economic systems, economic cycles, and growth theories. Then you have got those which are looking after global trade, choice, markets, and then tax and spend policies. Okay. So all of these are coming from finance and economics. I hope you are here, Jewel and team. Jewel is in marketing, sorry. Those who don't like talking, the economics and finance students who are here. Please, is it synonymous to any of the things that you have studied in class? Any kind of community concludes, any idea of anything you have studied in class that we mentioned?
Yes, Prof.
Okay. Then when it comes to marketing, I'm not saying that these are all the choices that exist. I'm just giving examples. There's decision process a consumer goes to make a choice. So we may have it called, one of the choices is called hierarchy of effects theory. And you have got the awareness, knowledge, liking, preference, conviction, pages. Now, if you are using this one to study a bunch of adverts, you should have to know that at the first level, you're thinking about thinking. So does the advert communicate information that causes you to make a calculated decision? I think. Number two, does the advert appeal to you emotionally? Anyway. Number three, when these two things are satisfied, does the advert itself give you information to how to purchase it, where to purchase it, or give you triability, ability to come and try it and purchase it? So all these things can come up and we can then use to study. Most Ghanaians don't do what they do. They may do well with their awareness and feel, but at the do, it doesn't make sense. And sometimes they are aware, they feel too, the advert can be a little bit outrageous and or can be questionable. I don't know whether I've seen this advert in Ghana by, is it low fat or low nut? Is this malaria drug that a wedding is going to take place and then the groom falls sick and the bride with the bride gown?
It's absurd.
On the bicycle.
But I
Very
think
unprofessional.
On a bicycle.
but it also tells, you see, it also has some gender sexism in it about how what women do and what women think doing about doing their wedding. But there are so many issues there. But the target group, for all you know, is just for the bottom of the pyramid, which will find it very interesting and it's about brand position. How do you want to position your brand? Now, the manager may have been thinking about getting, because the gentlemen were more dressed up for what we call a more of a generation X and a generation Y, the younger generation. Not, I won't say generation Z, because those are very, very young, but generation X and Y, those who are in their 30s and stuff, and who are trying to get, because it was a little bit formal, the kind of suit you're speaking up was going to wear. But then we look at the whole advert, and even where they went to buy it, places you pass, they realize that what if you did it more like an engagement which has more of a family orientation, and they are doing this in a family house? That would have been easier to sell than that one. But it tells you that the thing do. Sometimes somebody may get very angry with the feeling, and then to affect the thinking. So his emotion will write the calculated decision to buy, and then the buying will not take place. But I'm just letting you understand that when you are advert developer and you don't know some of the marketing theories, you develop them out of what will work. And sometimes even you go to some of the marketing agencies, there's no theories among them. Charlie, this one it worked here, let's just do it. And those of you who have traveled around, you tend to see sometimes even some of the Ghanaian conceptual the ideas for the concepts that they use for adverts are stolen from or borrowed from other countries. Those of you have seen that. Yeah. But recently, and you see how we are talking about marketing, but I'm going to show how environmental factors can inform marketing, can inform this advert, creation of advert. Nigeria just passed a law last week that from now on, if you are doing an advert, you can't use a foreign act a model. You have
Yeah.
to use a local model.
Only in Nigeria.
Excellent. You see, these are interesting. We criticize Nigerians for their economy not being as good as ours, or their naira not being as good as ours. But they are doing a lot of interesting policies that protects my Nigerian market, especially in the entertainment sector. But this one cuts across because there are adverts. I think we even think that there was an advert from GT Bank 737, and they took the Nigerian one and put it in Ghana just like that for us to accept it. And it was later that I think they changed it. So you see that sometimes environmental issues can influence, but environment is not captured here because they took the decision. This is a consumer level decision-making model. So it's at the micro level. But we are realizing now that sometimes even at a micro level, his decision can be influenced by macro level decisions. So if a person was going to use this for his PhD, that person has to think about the fact that the advert that the person is consuming does not exist in a vacuum. It exists in an environment. And then the advert belongs to an organization. So you need to bring other variables that can, or other theories that can help you to be able to apply this one, but be cognizant of the other influencing factors. That's what I'm just trying to say, which this theory may be weak to. So if you go on Google and type hierarchy of effects theory criticisms, I believe that you may find some of the things that we're talking about as the criticisms for the theory. I'm not saying the theory is bad. I'm just pointing out some of the things, how you may use it. Okay. So then there's service quality model from Parasuman in the marketing area. So Parasuman talks about the gap between what you expect and what you receive, and has dimensions on tangibility, reliability, responsiveness, assurance, and empathy. Sometimes you go to a shop and you are buying something and the person makes you feel that it's a burden that you should get up and help you find your product. And it's only Ghana that you can see these things happening. And interestingly too, you realize that according to Parasuman, there's what we call the functional quality, and then the what's the other one? Technical quality. So if you are trying to achieve any quality standards, you have to look at both. You can't do one. So typically you go to a chop bar and then you realize that the functional quality in terms of the function of it as a chop bar may not be in the best hygienic environment, but their technical quality of the type of food you eat, and when you finish eating it, the soup will give you a kind of feeling that you'll be in that area for about 6 or 7 weeks. You always think about going back to Bantama to eat that particular fufu. The technical quality is right, but the functional quality may not be right. So Parasuma talks about the fact that we need to get both qualities to be right, but you can have gaps in these areas. Good. This is a good model for understanding quality. It has been applied in healthcare. So if you go online right now and you look for healthcare, in healthcare situation, service quality, I think there's even service quality for healthcare. There's a model that they have modified to suit. I think they have got more dimensions. Those are used for the healthcare. There's even one for e-service quality, where they drew or they borrow some of the concepts of Parasuman for e-service quality for evaluating websites. So somebody's model can be picked up, and the tenets on the model, the constructs in the model, and what the proposition stands for can be applied to so many things. Now I come to the almighty generational theory, which currently I will argue that every good marketer who wants to make a good impact in research now, no matter what you do, try to look at the generational dimension, because that will give you a lot of voice out there. Most of our studies coming from Ghana and coming from Africa, we don't look at the generational differences, and there's a big gap in that area. Please hold on. My HO is coming. Sorry, so it's about admission issues. Okay. So okay. Let me share. I think right now where I've reached, I should just share my PowerPoint. I think I'll share everything. So the generational theory tries to look at the fact that generations may have some similar experiences. And that similar experiences actually tells us that they may also have peculiar choices when they go through life. So we should try to understand those generations, the generational cohorts, and try to know how to respond to them when we come to providing services or trying to understand how they behave in respect to anything that we try to research on. So this can happen to anything, not just about marketing, it can even happen to how they respond to in terms of leadership. For example, do certain generation of youth leaders do better than other generations of youth leaders? Or yesterday, I was asking a student a question that within the generations, what are the gender differences? Are females who are Gen Z more likely to do something more than the males than females who are generation Y? So it's a very big area for research, and I'm trying to build a team to look at all dimensions of different types of issues from a generational perspective. I've done some for MTN and for other institutions. We are trying to do other more because generational studies are very, very important as of today globally, especially from an African perspective, where the generational discussion has been very, very little. So this is, I'm just throwing it out there for students who are going to do any type of research that can draw, that has age as a variable. Try to just add the generation to, and your work can be phenomenal. If you are struggling to do it, then maybe we can talk. Okay. So there are different generations, and the categories, according to Pew Research, that research group that maintains and tells us the cohorts and their relationships all the time, talks about the fact that there are the different times they were born. So you have got, as of 2019, a person who is in Generation Z would have ended in 2012. Right now we have a new generation, the Alpha generation, that's above the Z. So then you have got the millennials. Millennials will be about 23 to 38. So they'll be about 42 years old now. If I were to become 42, somebody said that they will move to Generation X. But what we are trying to say here is that we are looking at more of the time they were born, the year in which they were born. So don't look at just the age, but the year they were born. Because that time, the world was going through certain specific things. For example, those who were born 1981 to 96, that was the computer generation, that where computer was now coming up. And then, not computer, internet had come up globally and it was being built. In Africa, ours started rather more on the 97 to 2012, the social media group. So the social media group are more of around here. So you said there are different categories, different type of behaviors. So in terms of birth period, this is it. The age, the major events of the world that they witnessed. So those born between 1980 and 1999. Sometimes somebody says after 1979, so depending on what you are using. They went through social media. In fact, they went through Google. They went through terrorist attacks and then technology birth. Then the global crisis, the 2000, the .com era, the mobile devices era, the Arab Spring, data issues. Now, when you look at all of them, it affects the way they think. For example, those who are in Generation Z do not trust political systems. They have a permanent connection with the internet. They like freedom, and they are the mobile generation. Generation Y likes flexibility, freedom to optimism, global communication, and technology convenience. And they like a work-life balance. Generation X are more job and career driven. Good. And I think one of them, I think forgotten, maybe Generation X. Generation X like more of a permanent job. So they are quite stable relatively. But Y is more about skill. So a Y person can change jobs like 3 times in a year. Good. And then the Z person even wants to work from home and multitask. So you can just imagine. So individualism is here. Skepticism towards authority, job security is important to them. And I think they are also family oriented, if I'm right. Good. Now, one company that did use this one very well was Stanchart. They had a series of adverts a few years ago what they call the adverts. Oh, they had a name for the adverts. I used to use it to teach. I'll try and find it. And they had an advert for Generation Z, Y, and each of the categories. So I used to show the advert in class, and I'll use it to explain. And we all try to understand what they are trying to communicate. Who is the advert targeting? Okay. Our theory of planned behavior, we have talked about it already. So all these theories I mentioned are existing theories that you could actually draw from in one way or the other to do your PhD work. Let me see if I can find the theory I'm talking about. Okay, I don't think I have it here. Market strategy. Okay. Maybe I'll find, if I find it, I'll share it on with the class later. Okay. So that's the theory of plan B. We were talking about it earlier. Then there's also this one, studies cultural dimensions, that talks about, it's an environmental framework. An environmental framework looks at environmental issues. So you've got power distance, individualism versus collectivism, masculinity versus femininity, uncertainty avoidance. We don't have much of studies in Ghana coming from this area too, where we look at the cultural dimension, how it affects people's decisions and their responsiveness to certain issues. So but in Africa, in West Africa, which according to the study that Hostedi did for different cultures, we are more collective, which is true. We tend to develop our society based on what others say, and with those what they say in terms of group tend to influence us a lot. But gradually, that one is a little bit changing because of the different generation groups. That's why I was saying that generation study is a very interesting thing. If you look at generation studies and combine it with culture, we can actually see the conflicts between generations and culture. That would be a very interesting study. Now, power distance, the degree to which the less powerful members of the society accept and expect power is distributed unequally. This one is just what you witnessed this week. They said O24 has shut down a radio station because the radio station went to say certain things. So the society expects a particular behavior from the members of the radio station. Anything that they do in terms of challenging a traditional authority means that they usurp their position or their power, and they can do something about it. And even if dementia is not going to talk, people in the community think that you are breaking the community rules, and they'll try to put you in your place or correct you. So hierarchy is very, very important in terms of, and respect is very important in high power distance communities, which Ghana tends to be one of them. Then masculinity versus femininity. So a masculine society is at large more competitive, achievement oriented, and then assertive. Oh, yeah. Please give me a second. So what we see here is the fact that in terms of masculinity, it's at large is more competitive, achievement oriented, and assertive. Society at large is more consensus oriented in a feminist society, and modesty is more important. So somebody may say that Ghana will even lean towards more of femininity, whilst most of the developed countries lean towards more of achievement orientation and assertive. But you can see that there may be difference between Accra and maybe another community, Accra and another city in Ghana. Accra, people come here and there's more competition to succeed. Like you want to try and succeed, try and get something and make name for yourself. So somebody can say that Accra, for example, in some parts of Accra, in some lifestyles in Accra here, a parent cannot just get up and go and visit their child. You have to give them the child some ample notice because of the type of job the person does. Is very busy, a busy person in the family. You may come to their home and they're not even anybody there. Because Sunday, even on Sunday, they are going to work. So or Sunday is the only day they rest. So if you show up in their workplace at home to visit them, you will find it very awkward that they may not receive you warmly. But there are other type of people who are in certain type of lifestyles that or even certain communities where like in Kumasi, when I lived in Kumasi, I saw something that used to be there in the part of Kumasi I was living. Somebody just gets up, he goes to his uncle's house. He doesn't tell the uncle he's coming. He goes up, he still get food to eat there, relax there, stay there for 3 days without nobody will tell you to leave. Then when you want to leave and go back home, you can leave and go back home at any time. But this is gradually changing. Masculinity is taking place where because of the economy and other issues, you can just show up somebody's house and say they have come there to visit. Anyway, I don't know anybody can attest to what I'm saying. And those who tend to have a masculine type of lifestyle, people don't really understand them, and they think that they are anti-so, or this person is some way, or they don't. You are not friendly. You are not. You sorry.
That you are stingy.
They are stingy, yeah. And even among you students, I think you have the same issues that somebody thinks that, oh, let's get up, I'm coming to see you for this. And said, oh no, you can't come at this time. And say, but this person, and they even take it as an offense because you have been very assertive to them by telling them the truth that I can't meet you at this time. And this person, oh, if you ask him for this, meanwhile, the person is just telling you the truth and being assertive. He has not talked about anything negative about you, nothing concerning that. But because of the feministic perspective that you may have in your mind, or collectivist mindset you might have, you are thinking that the family orientation should be bigger, or it should be more acceptable to receive a larger groups, and you should find yourself working or doing what a group think. So an individual think is anything that is not acceptable. Then uncertainty avoidance. Some communities, people don't like things that they are uncertain about. They won't take any decision if they are uncertain about certain things. So there's high uncertainty avoidance. Anything that has got a lot of risk, they won't take it. Sometimes people argue that Ghanaians have got higher uncertainty avoidance as compared to Nigerians, because certain risk that Nigerians will take. Ghanaian will think through about it 7 times before you may even take that risk. I'm not saying that it's a good or bad thing. Hofstede doesn't say this is good or bad. He's just telling you that this is how the society is and how people reacting. Now, who is this important to? Anybody who is doing any project management study, dealing people, cultures is important. Even marketing is important. Trying to sell products and stuff is important. So depending on the type of research you are doing, where the society and culture will come into it, you may want to. In my own PhD, I didn't do my PhD on these issues, but when I was trying to explain why websites like those which are social oriented are growing fast in Ghana. That time, at the time I was doing my PhD, I remember the sites that were booming most was Peace FM Online, Joy FM Online, and those which are trying to create a community environment for Ghanaians who are in the diaspora to actually participate and know what's happening in Ghana. So I try to point out that perspective from the collectivism perspective. I try to argue from the collectivism perspective that a Ghanaian living abroad is trying to connect back. And these are the only online medium that have got data and I've got content for them to know what is going on. So those websites then become some of the most traffic websites, and the traffic is not coming from internal, but it's coming from an external source or a external audience who are outside Ghana. See, I was explaining something in my PhD, but I could draw from the Hofstede's dimension to come and explain it. But that doesn't mean I've used Hofstede's dimension for my whole PhD. Just that in my findings, that's why it is good to know different theories, so that in your findings, if something is going beyond your theory you are using, you can still find explanation for it. So future studies, in my conclusion, I can say future studies can look at how culture interfaces with social media to let certain things to create value for companies or something like that, using Hofstede's dimension. Something I can make recommendations based on that. Okay, in information systems, I think there's quite a lot. There are only 3 people. You have talked to them about it before, so I know. So this was the technology organization theory model I was talking about earlier. So I told you that about Tonaski is the one who wrote the book rather, and the chapter was rather written by somebody, Oliveria or something. So the argument is that the actual theory credit should go to those who wrote the chapter. But anyway, it seems that the book itself has become the the credit to the theory has been given to the authors of the book. Maybe they also discuss it in a particular way in it. Okay, so I mentioned that there are different factors underneath the organizational, environment, and technological, and you can draw on different theories or different factors that you may want to use for your work. Now, all of these you can even draw from other theories. Look at power distance, patterns of communication, trust between people. This coming from what we just discussed on our study. Dimensions that can also be seen here. Okay. Now, critical theory selection questions. Okay, critical questions for theory selection. That's what I was trying to say. But the way I've written it sounds like first critical theory. I was trying to say critical questions for theory selection. The first one is, I think, relevance. Relevance to the concept you're trying to study. Like what we have studied right now, looked at. Because you can come from the concept and Google the concept and find the theory. Or the phenomenon you want to study in terms of the broader aspects. Then what about the discipline that you come from, marketing? Do they use it? Have they used it before? Are you the first person to go out of your field to go and bring a theory from another field to apply in your area? The audience, your supervisor is one of the audience. The thesis examiner is one of the audience. The research committee in your area of study is one of the audience. So ask yourself, will your audience accept it? Or has your audience accepted it before? Has it been rejected by the audience before? Is there enough room for contribution? Some people argue that if you take a theory that has been well used, there's so much dimensions that has been used in the theory so that it's very difficult for you to find anything new to add to the theory. So you have to be very careful. Or people have addressed all the gaps of the theory. Will you get adequate data for your analysis? It happens. Students have been abandoning their literature review and changing their literature review and changing their theoretical chapters because they realized that the data they got was not sufficient in carrying out the study. Because some of the dimensions of the theory is immature for the phenomenon. What do I mean by that? You are doing a study and you're asking questions on certain variables that the community has not experienced those dimensions. So you will not get any data there. And that makes your theory inadequate for application, or your theoretical framework inadequate for application in the area or conceptual framework. Now, maturity versus literature. The theory is well used, so there's a lot of literature for it. Or the theory is immature, it's just emerging. There's few literature for it. Now, the one that is few literature for, there may be a lot of room for contribution. But if you're not very careful, you may only have 2 papers on that theory. And people may not understand it well. Your audience may not understand it very well, so it may go against you. The one that is well established, there's very little room for contribution. So you have to dig deep to be able to find a unique area you can contribute from. So sometimes what you do is that you transfer the theory to a different context. For example, the one we saw earlier, commitment trust theory, the one the marketing paper for, has been used well to understand relationship marketing. But trying to take it to a different medium, online platforms, it has not been done a lot. And even authors, about 4 or 5 different authors at the time that thesis was being done or paper was being written, had echoed that the theory has to be applied in the online context, but the variables that should be used for it that will make it applicable have not been well outlined. So it is good that other studies take it up and see how the theories can be operationalized for an online context. Operationalization means that how do you use the theory in terms of measurement? Some of the theory, the concepts in the theory or the constructs in the theory may be very good, but they may not have any measures to measure them. So some of the theories have got their own established skills. For example, if you take ecological sometimes this is not fair to all the students, whoever was doing that. So there is the technology acceptance model, and Davis 1989 brought it up. But he has used it so much that he has developed skills of how to be able to measure usefulness, how to be able to measure perceived use of use. So the question that comes up is that you that have selected a model that you want to, or a variable you want to use, where are you going to get the measures for? Is there any existing study that has used that model or that factor? Can you write to the author to give you his questionnaire so they can know how to adapt? Because he has used the questionnaire and the questionnaire can help you. Some of the papers, they put the questionnaire at the back or they put the skills at the back or as a table or at the appendix for you to be able to use. Otherwise, you have to write to them and they will give you, and some of them will give you, some of them will not give it to you. Especially the person wants to make name out of it. He's not building, he's writing a second and third paper. He should give it to you and you go and use to write your paper. No, go and also develop your own from scratch. So the difficulty is that some of the variables, you may not have scales to measure them, or may not have even a questionnaire. Even if there's not even a scale, may not be a questionnaire for you to guide you. So what will you do in that scenario? So you have to think about that carefully. I'm not saying that doesn't mean that you cannot use it, but I'm just telling you to think about it. Then the level of theory and then the unit of analysis. You are doing the study and you are looking at this at the micro level. And you are also trying to analyze the issue at the you are looking at the issue at the micro level in terms of the data collection. So it's your unit of analysis is at the micro level. You look at individuals. However, the theory I'm going to pick is about things at the institutional level. So how can you take a meso or macro level type of theory and apply it at to look at issues at the individual level? It may not be applicable. So you have to know how you marry the two very well, even though there may be macro level issues that could influence. Remember, I was talking about hierarchy of effects, that there may be other issues that may come from, like what I mentioned, Nigeria, policy dimension. In a policy issue in Nigeria is affecting what the ability to get job as an individual, as a model in Nigeria. So now you're giving, there are more options for you to become for you to get better jobs or more jobs in Nigeria if you're a model in Nigeria because of one government policy. So you are seeing a macro level intervention have an effect at the micro level or at the industry level. So if you want to look at those relationships, you have to know how you measure them very well and bring them together. Otherwise, you confuse yourself. And that's the same thing I was talking about. So in effect, the models that we have, the theory that we have studied, the theories that we are going to use for our long essay, they can come from theory, they can come from literature, they can come from existing theories, and we can combine or modify them and use to develop our conceptual framework. And that then becomes our research framework for our study. So please appreciate some of the things I've told you about how to select a theory and then learn from others how they have selected it. Sometimes go online, Google something about your area, look at the papers, you're not even studying, just look at the papers and look at how the person moved from literature review, justify the selection of variables and turn it into a research model and went to collect data. Then pick another paper. Then you'll be learning from it, especially from authors you like, people who like their writing style. You'll be learning from it. Gradually, your mind will become saturated on the different parts of how people develop conceptual frameworks and use it for their work. And the confidence will be built. Thank you very much.
You are welcome, Prof.
Okay. So
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you too. Is there any question? If there's no question.
Thank you, Prof.
Hello, Prof. I have a question.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can
Okay. So about the operationalization of the theory, that's the scale and the questionnaire.
Yes, please.
So assuming that you don't have any existing scale for under that theory, or you can't find any, for our thesis, is it allowed to develop scale from literature and then test it, and if it's good, you will use it for your work?
Yeah, but the scale development can be a whole PhD. That's what that's why I was telling you. It's not a scale development can be a whole PhD. But even if there is no scale for it, sometimes some people also can find other studies that have similar variables, and they will try to draw on how they develop questions around it. Especially if you are qualitative, it's very easy for you to do that. It's a quantitative that the skills become an issue.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm quantitatively oriented. So
yeah, so our advice that
I was trying to pardon me, Prof.
You're trying to do something. I didn't hear.
Yes, I said I was trying to study an emerging area. It's something that is emerging recently, and I was even finding it difficult getting and asking this question, that if there's no existing skill, how then do you come up with one by looking at existing literature and then drawing from them? I think even I was planning on contacting you for further advice, but if you can answer this question.
I can't say that because I don't know what you are studying. There are so many issues to do with what exists in the area already. Somebody will say that he's doing something new, but if you go to literature review, realize that he's just transferring from one area to another area. So I cannot say, but it's important that you understand all that has been studied in that area and what kind of measurements have been used for the theory of the area. So you can be able to know where you are starting from. Because choosing a skill, developing a skill is a whole PhD work. And I think you have to be very careful saying you're going to do that. What others try to do is that they adapt 6 skills. So for example, somebody goes to pick, let's say, transparency. I'm just using that one, transparency. But transparency has been used in finance, but he is now using it in, let's say, HR. So you pick the explanation of transparency and still look at the finance questions and see whether he can adapt the question to be able to apply to his work. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Okay.
Good.
Yes, Prof.
Good.
Okay.
Or you pick it from
Prof, I'll still contact you. I'll contact you for a personal consultation.
I hear. The way I see it, I see it is a cube. Anyway.
Hello, Prof. Please, are we meeting this evening, please?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
Because you didn't tell me anything like that on Monday.
Oh, Prof. I thought we concluded about the Thursday evenings if you are available.
You didn't check with me when I'm available. So how? And I also how will I also know you are the class available?
Oh, okay. But I thought it was going to be recurring.
We are dealing with people who are parents, who are executives, who are very, very busy. They may make time for you this week. The next week, they may not even be in the country. So we can't just take anything for a given. We have to respect them.
Okay. Yes, Prof. But for the class, we have made it recurring. So we have decided like
you are the one using your mouth to say something. Time.
Yes, Prof.
Okay, thank you very much, and see you guys next
Prof.
week. So I think I
Prof,
will do some videos
hello, Prof.
that I put together for you, including this one.
Hello, Prof.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Hello, Prof.
Yes, please go ahead. Go ahead.
All right. So let's say you are dealing with firm level theory, but then firm level theory, and you are conducting research on the individuals, maybe of an organization or something, or individuals, just say customers. And maybe within the theory, there's a construct that could help you explain something better. Okay, so let's take the term, for example. Term usually helps at the individual level, but then you want to build something, technology adoption model for maybe firms, and maybe you see a construct that might help you build that. Could you still borrow and use it? If you are borrowing, how do you then go about it?
Please, this is the same thing I just talked about earlier that on the theory of planned behavior. Somebody did the work and then went to take another variable called involvement and just added, and it justified why he's using it. So you can actually borrow from any other place. But the question is that does
No, I mean the different levels.
No, the different levels
The different.
I can't, it's case and by case basis, because I don't know how you're going to analyze something you are collecting data at the organization level against somebody at the individual level. You can discuss organizational issues and then discuss the individual issues differently. The question is that what are you trying to solve? Are you trying to, there could be factors in the industry that can affect a person's choice. But if you are saying that you are taking an organization, then the organization is the one you are taking. I don't know how to explain. Let me give you an example. You are a medical doctor. You are looking at factors that influence medical doctors to use let's say tablets for diagnosis. it could come from the medical council or Ghana Health Service. So that one is much more coming from an external stimulus, which can come from the industry. But I'm not analyzing it at the industry. I'm analyzing it that the fact that the policy was enacted and the person obeyed it. And I will look at, because in the policy itself, they will say that you as an individual doctor should do this. So the policy is even prescriptive at the individual level. Or if it can be prescribed at the institution level, I say that all healthcare institutions in good standing should make sure that their medical doctors use tablets. So still it's instructive at the individual level.
Okay.
Do you understand
you.
what I'm trying to say?
Yes, please.
But I will not want to say that funding, the medical council didn't get funding, and that is the funding that affected it. That is a different issue. I don't know how to explain it, but I don't know whether you get it. Like the issues that
Yes, please.
the funding issues and all kinds of stuff, corruption and the medical. No, I will not try to do that. But you see,
Okay.
there is something we call causality. Causality means that what causes something to happen. You can have and what we call an attendant effect. That is something we call an attendant effect. So something is supposed to affect something, but it is affecting you, and because you are in Ghana, it also affects you. I hope you understand, like the dollar issue. It's had an attendant effect on you because you live in Ghana. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yes, please.
But to solve the dollar issue, I'll not come and analyze it at your level. But I can analyze the effects of what you are going through. Do you understand me?